Eric Leiderman. I'm producer of Late Night with Seth Meyers. I co-run the show, overseeing things like digital department, ad sales, the segment producers who do the guests, like promos. But the sweetest thing I get to do, and the thing that I don't tell anyone but enjoy the most, kind of like the dessert, is overseeing the HE band. And I also created the rotating drummer program. So I think that last thing is why I'm here today. Warren Michaels' idea was to have Fred Armisen, who's also a fantastic musician, come in and curate the house band. So basically what happened was I'd known Fred from LA a little bit, and we had to basically form a band. So long story short, we formed a band, got some great players in, and Fred's playing drums, so it's all great. Fred also is a very successful comedic actor, and so what we realized was Fred was going to be gone for periods of time, and then we'd have to get another drummer. So I was kind of like, I remember I think it was 2014, I'm like, why don't we just get Chad Smith or something to play drums this week? And we got in touch with Chad Smith, and I gave him a call, and it's like, oh yeah, I'll do it. And I'm like, oh cool, that's great. So we got Chad Smith, and Fred came back the next week, and then Fred was gone again. And I'm just like, hey, I used to be a professional drummer. You know, I know a lot of these people. I have endorsements from back in the day that are a little stale at this point, but I can get back in touch and could probably connect with some great players, probably the greatest players, why not? And that's really how it started, and Fred was on board with it, Seth was on board with it, and we just went from there, and then it's just kind of, now it's like week after week we have great drummers, then Fred gets to come back, like he's coming back this week, and then next week I'll have, hey, Vinny Caliuta, you want to come down? Hey, Patrick Carney, you want to come down? Like, it's just whoever. There's no limits to the kind of player we have. As long as they are a great drummer, they're eligible. So I think it's the fan part for me. It's when I have drummers come in who are literally on my wall, who I sat and air drummed to in the car, in my college dorm, I don't know, on the way to work this morning. I mean, nothing has changed for me. I'm still a fan of drummers and drumming. So to actually be in contact with them, have conversations with them, and most of them are great. Some of them, it's like Don't Meet Your Heroes, like, oh, this person doesn't want to tell me about the snare drum they used on their first album back in late 90s. It's like, why not? Every conversation is different, every experience is different, but they're all great drummers, and they all have left an imprint on me. So the fan in me, then who gets to see them every week, and then sometimes I have to give them notes, which is like, excuse me, sir. It's very intense, but it's also really gratifying. And then they have a great experience of getting to play drums for 4 days, and then the focus is on the drummer. The focus isn't just about the band or that guest. Seth introduces a drum every night. He holds up an item they're promoting, tour or whatever it is, and then the camera goes right to the drummer, and you see that drummer be like, me? Because the drummer is, as we know, the glue in the band, but it's not always like, oh man, I saw the drummer from so-and-so down at Whole Foods. We say that because we're drum nerds, but then America is like, this drummer this week, It's like big band stuff too, right? Because drummers have always been the centerpiece of big bands and thus late night bands. It started with, Shaughnessy, of course, Max Weinberg, Quest. It's crazy and now Fred. And so all the drummers are really the band leaders, and each week we have a different iconic player. Whew, got smoky in here. Not only is it a different drummer here each week, but we're reminding people that the drummer is an incredible, integral part of the band. And then to actually see them, and it's like, oh yeah, the drummer. And anyone who's been to band knows, if you have a bad drummer, you don't have a good band. You can always have a guitar player who's just wanking all over the place and bumming notes and stuff, which is fine. Burn on guitar players, but also if you don't have a good drummer, you don't really have a band, and you don't have a cohesive piece of music happening. So I think with that every week, that's the joy for me. And the fact that we do it every week, and when you see Seth hold up their art for album art, or talk about their tour, or even just their Instagram, I just get a little yeah, it's about the drummer for once. And so now all drummer jokes should stop. Yeah. And that's my entire point of doing this.
The drummers and all drummer jokes.
That is my entire mantra. The Ludwig Factory was incredible. The thing I enjoyed the most out of the experience was I've been to a couple of drum factories before, like kind of from a distance, like peeked in. But the fact that there was, the thing that was most interesting for me was the individual care that goes into each drum, and even going back to like the individual molds and proprietary machinery, those things, I felt like I was part of a tradition and I wasn't truly like part of a factory. I felt like there was real care and thought going into everything, and everyone I met had a story, and it wasn't like, you go to like any, I've been to other factories too, not just for drums, and a lot of it is kind of like, oh yeah, I do this thing, I was trained to do it, then there's turnover. I felt like everyone there really had a story and a connection to the drums, and I honestly hadn't thought about that with the drum kits I had before, so I'm like, I really felt connected to the drums. And when you or someone would hand me something or show me the process, now I can't help but think about each stage that goes into the drums, and to me, that feels like there's a lot more people involved and have touched the drums that I either see other artists playing, I get to play, or like we have in the studio now. And to me, it still felt like a small business, a small company, even though there's all these steps, there's all these people, and there's all this space needed to just make a drum kit that takes up, this small amount of space, and I really enjoyed that. So when we went to the Ludwig Factory, Uli showed us 4 lines of kits, because I was familiar with Ludwig, and my first kit was a Ludwig Rocker 2, and then I hadn't had a Ludwig, and that was like when I was 10, and I hadn't had really, I still know a lot about Ludwig snares and stuff, and I'm familiar here and there, but I wasn't really that familiar with like all the lines and the differences. Uli brought out the Legacy series, Legacy Maple, Legacy Mahogany, Classic Maple. He also brought out Vistalite kit and Keystone, which is an oak kit, and they were all great. So I'm sitting there bouncing between all these kits, and I'm like, well, these are all great, and I need all of these kits for my different rock reasons, whatever. And we looked pretty close at even, I thought about Vistalite for a second, just because visually it's so striking, and I thought it'd be amazing here. And then I was even like, well, maybe Keystone will work. It's really focused, it's really loud, it looks great. Each one had a really distinct characteristic that I think, and I think it's safe to say that all would work in the studio, but we ended up going with the Legacy Maple, because I just wanted something that was classically Ludwig. And I think when you have so many players coming through of all different, genres, we have fusion players, we have jazz players, we have rock players, we have metal players, any kind of music you can think of, we have a drummer for it who's come through. We've had like over 150, 175 drummers. So I thought the Legacy Maple, in look and in sound, most importantly, first and foremost, it's got to sound right, was the right choice for us. What was interesting, Uli and I went back and forth about colors, because of course I wanted something custom, something special and specific. I wanted to feel that this kit was going to be on camera 5 nights a week, and everyone's going to see it over and over again in multiple shots. It's got to look great. And we did a lot of custom stuff back and forth, and all of it was like great. I'm like, these are some good options. But then one day I'm like, we got to go, this is classic. I want classic sound. I need classic aesthetics too. And I'm like, how about that blue sparkle? Uli sent me a picture, and within 30 seconds I'm like, yeah, we're done. We had spent hours and days going back and forth on colors, and I was really appreciative of like the care taken to actually figure out the right color. But then it was like the classic blue sparkle. I mean, you look at it, oh, okay. Yeah, and I always feel kind of dumb not just doing it right away, because this to me speaks to me on an emotional level, and of course on the history of Ludwig. I mean, it's a wrap that's been in use since the 60s, I believe. It's perfect. And now as you see it, let me show you again how great it looks. And look at this, this stage has like a lot of blue tints to it too, if you see around. A lot of blue hits. The floor is a little bit blue and black. And the show logo, our color, has a lot of blue in it. And it'd be weird, I think, to have anything else that wasn't a shade of blue. And let me tell you, I don't know if you've noticed, this is the perfect color for Late Night with Seth Meyers. This ultimately, I will say that ultimately the HE band is a rock band. And when players come in who aren't known for being rock players, they have to adjust, and the band has to adjust. And having a kit that can really adjust with the player is super important, because the band knows the sound of the kit, and whether they're thinking about that or not, there's a familiarity. But each player comes in and makes the kit sound different. Maybe the tunings are a little different and their playing style is different. But it's important to have a kit that's going to hold up and do what the player needs, but also keep that familiarity with the band, which makes the HE band sound like the HE band week after week. Some of my favorite players musically have made a big impression on me, and also as people have made a big impression on me. And when those things work together, it's really, it creates an unforgettable week for me. John Theodore is one of my really favorites who's come through. Carter McLean, These are two guys like John Theodore's Queens of Stone Age big rock guy, and then Carter McLean has been playing Lion King for almost 2 decades on Broadway. And then Fabrizio from Strokes came in, made the kit sing, great guy. Nate Smith is here, and he's done the show twice. And he just, I sometimes I just have to stop and just kind of watch guys like him and just let them rip. Cal Yuta came in. These are things I do not forget because you're watching people you've watched, when you see them in concert, from 50 rows back or, up in bird's eye. I'm really watching them for a feet or two from these guys playing. And it just doesn't get old. Fred is a minimalist player. He comes in, he's a guy who's like not obsessed with gear, not obsessed with like his sticks. He just comes in and he gets it done. He's a professional. He's a professional comedian, he's a professional musician, and I think his approach is pretty similar. He relies on his talent and has enough confidence in what he does to come in and doesn't need to make it fancy. Honestly, I know he loves Ludwig, I know he loves drums, I know he loves this brand, that brand. He loves all of it because he loves music. And he doesn't obsess about those things, he appreciates them, but what's important for Fred is coming in and really just getting it done and being a pro and making it look easy. And he can shift between that, like when he's bantering with Seth and being funny and being quick on his feet. To, I think today he's coming in late, he probably won't have a rehearsal, he's just gonna come and he's just gonna knock it out. And no one's gonna sweat about it because he is a pro. And the way he plays too, he keeps everything very simple. And like I said, he's a minimalist player because he's about the song. And again, going back to like younger players and stuff, that's the advice. It's like listen to serve what's best of the song. And in this case, serve what's best for Seth in the show. And Fred is kind of the litmus test for all the drummers who come in and do that week after week.